My name's Jacob, I'm 28, and I haven't been on a proper vacation in over 6 years. Not because I couldn't afford it, necessarily. I've always been decent with money, careful even, but because every time I'd start thinking about booking something, some family emergency would pop up like clockwork. A broken down car, a surprise surgery, my niece's once-in-a-lifetime ballet recital across the country. And every single time, the plea would come from my parents, cloaked in guilt and packaged with the same tired words. You know how much your help means to this family, right? I used to think I was being the good son, the responsible one, the unselfish brother. But now, I think I was just the most convenient sucker. I'm not bitter by nature. Or at least, I didn't used to be. I grew up in a pretty standard middle-class home, in the kind of suburb where people smile at each other on the sidewalk, but still quietly judge the height of your grass. My older sister, Vanessa, has always been the shiny one. You know the type, big personality, big hair, even bigger demands. She married her college boyfriend, Alan, who works in finance and walks like he owns every room he steps into. Together they had 2 kids who I used to babysit when I was in high school, for free, while Vanessa ran errands, which usually meant getting her nails done or sipping wine with friends. Meanwhile, I'd be wiping noses and burning frozen pizzas. Our parents, Deb and Frank, aren't cartoonishly evil or anything. They're just selectively blind. Maybe it's because Vanessa gave them grandkids, or maybe it's because she's always louder than me, always more dramatic, always makes everything feel urgent. Whatever the reason, they've been bending over backward to meet her needs since we were kids. If she needed money, they loaned it. If she messed up, they understood. If I said anything, I was being difficult. Eventually, I stopped pointing it out. It wasn't worth the eye rolls, the passive-aggressive sighs, the conversations that ended with, "Can't you just be happy for your sister?" I kept my head down. I went to trade school, got certified as an HVAC technician, and now I run my own small but successful business. I don't drive a fancy car, but I own it outright. I bought a modest house a few towns over. I've got a decent savings account, and I've never once asked my parents for money. You'd think that would earn me some kind of respect, or at least some basic fairness. But in our family, stability just makes you invisible. It was early spring when my parents mentioned the idea of a family trip. Just something small, they said. A chance to get everyone together. I lit up at the idea. I hadn't taken more than a long weekend off in years. We were thinking of the coast, my mom said, flipping through a brochure with sun-kissed beaches on the cover. Maybe a rental near the water. Wouldn't that be nice? I nodded, already picturing the sound of waves and maybe a few days without client calls. Then she added, "But we'll have to see. Money's been tight lately. We'll keep you posted." A few weeks later, the trip had mysteriously morphed into a maybe next year situation. My dad called me one evening while I was finishing up paperwork in my garage. "Just can't swing it this year, kiddo," he said with a heavy sigh. "You know how it is. Groceries, gas, life." I told him I understood. And I did. I wasn't going to guilt my aging parents into spending money they didn't have. "Maybe I'll plan something small for myself," I added, half joking, half hoping they'd suggest we split something. But there was just a pause on the line. Then, "That's a good idea. You deserve it." I didn't book anything. Work got busy, and I figured I'd use the time to catch up on some house projects. But then, one morning in late May, I opened Instagram and felt my stomach drop. It was Vanessa, posting a boomerang of champagne glasses clinking together, in first class. The caption? "Au revoir, America. See you soon. Paris, #family trip." I stared at the screen, reread the caption, then scrolled. There they were, my niece and nephew, grinning in oversized sunglasses, lounging in luxury seats, trays of macarons and fresh fruit in front of them like some kind of French fairy tale. Another post showed Vanessa and Alan posing with my parents at the airport gate. So grateful to my amazing parents for helping make this happen. Family is everything. My mom had commented a string of heart emojis. My dad had liked every photo. I sat there for a full 10 minutes, phone in hand, pulse thudding in my ears. They'd gone. All of them. On a trip that I was explicitly told couldn't happen. A trip I was apparently never meant to be part of. And they'd smiled through it. Posed. Bragged. "Hope you understand," my mom had said. I didn't comment. I didn't text. I didn't even mention it in our family group chat, which went silent for a few days anyway. But something in me started to shift. That quiet, dependable son they always counted on? I think he quietly packed his bags and left that day. Because I realized something. I wasn't family. Not in the way they defined it. I was support staff. An ATM with a smile. A week later, my phone rang. It was my dad. "Jacob," he said, his voice tight with panic. "Hey, I just got a notice from the bank. The mortgage payment didn't go through. It's showing overdue. Do you know anything about that?" I paused. Let the silence stretch out until he added, "You've been helping us cover that since December, right? Maybe something glitched." I took a deep breath and said, as calmly as I could, "Ask the ones you could afford." Then I hung up. And I've never felt silence so satisfying. But that was just the beginning. Because what my dad didn't know, what none of them knew, was that for once, I wasn't going to sweep this under the rug. I had a plan, and they were going to feel it. I didn't sleep much that night after hanging up on my dad. Not because I regretted it, I didn't. But because I was finally feeling something I hadn't let myself feel in years, the full weight of being used. It was like waking up from a dream you didn't know you were having. All those years I thought I was being helpful, loyal, the good son. I was just being taken advantage of, over and over again. They didn't see me. Not really. They saw my reliability, my income, my silence. And when I finally pulled the plug on that support, their confusion wasn't just insulting, it was enlightening. The following morning, my mom texted, "Hey honey, Dad said there was an issue with the bank. Can you call us?" No apology. No explanation. No mention of Paris. I ignored it. Over the next few days, the calls started coming in waves. First my dad, then my mom, then Vanessa. I didn't answer. I was too busy doing something they never thought I would, looking after myself. I called the bank, removed my automatic payments from their account, and formally ended my cosigner status that I'd agreed to years ago temporarily when they were refinancing the house. I was 24 at the time. Still young enough to believe my parents would never let it fall on me. Young and stupid. When I stopped taking their calls, they shifted tactics. Vanessa messaged me directly. "Okay, this is childish now. If something's wrong, just say it. But punishing mom and dad is cruel." I stared at the message. No joke. She really thought I was the problem. I left it on read. A few days later, I finally picked up when my mom called. I don't know what made me answer. It might have been curiosity, or maybe I just wanted to see if she'd at least try to make things right. "Oh, thank goodness," she said the second I answered. "We've been so worried, Jacob. Your father's been on edge. We thought something might have happened to you." I didn't say anything. I waited. She filled the silence, as usual. "Look, sweetie, I don't know what's going on, but if you had an issue with the Paris trip, you should have said something. We didn't invite you because we didn't want to make you feel obligated. You work so hard, and we thought you'd want to rest instead of flying across the world." I almost laughed. "You told me we couldn't afford a trip." Well, for all of us, no. Vanessa and Alan helped cover most of it. It was sort of a last-minute thing, really. You posted pictures. The tickets were booked at least a month out. She hesitated. Well, plans shifted. "But Jacob, come on. It's not like we do this all the time. And Vanessa's kids are growing up so fast. We just wanted to make memories." Of course. Memories for Vanessa's family. Meanwhile, I was supposed to be proud of being the family mule. "That's the last mortgage payment I'm ever covering," I said. "Wait, Jacob, don't do anything rash," she said quickly. "You know we're in a rough patch. Just a couple more months, and we can reassess." "No," I said, firmer this time. "You said you couldn't afford a trip, but you flew halfway across the world in first class. You lied. Don't pretend this is a misunderstanding." "We didn't lie," she said, too quickly. "We just didn't include you." That sentence sat in my chest like a stone. Didn't include me. Not forgot. Not couldn't. Didn't. I hung up again. I blocked her number after that. For a few weeks, I avoided everything related to my family. I buried myself in work. I finally bought myself something nice, a long weekend at a cabin in the mountains, just me, a wood-burning stove, and absolute silence. No calls. No guilt. No manipulation. And that would have been the end of it, if they'd just left me alone. But you don't just cut off your role in the family machine without consequences. Not when that role is keeping it all together. It was late June when things escalated. I came home from a job site to find a letter taped to my front door. It wasn't from the bank or the government. It was handwritten. I recognized the loopy cursive immediately. My mom. "Jacob, we need to talk. This can't go on forever. Your father is getting sick from the stress. You're breaking this family apart. Please come by for dinner Sunday. Vanessa and the kids will be there. We can talk this through like adults. Love. Mom. Talk this through like adults. Code 4, let us explain why you're wrong and guilt you until you cave. I didn't go, but I did watch from my security camera as Sunday rolled around and they all pulled into the driveway. Vanessa in her obnoxiously large SUV. My dad walking slowly, hunched more than usual. My mom looking around like I might suddenly step out and hug them. I stayed inside. Lights off. Curtains drawn. They stayed for 10 minutes, then drove away. The next morning, I got an email from my dad. A long one. Half plea, half guilt trip. He said he understood I was upset, but that I needed to stop punishing the family. That families forgive each other. That financial support was just part of being close-knit. That Vanessa had different pressures, and I shouldn't compare our situations. The kicker? He asked if I could resume the mortgage payments, just for the next 3 months, until they found a solution. I didn't reply. I should have seen what came next. I really should have. A week later, I got a call from my bank. There'd been an attempt to access my savings account. Online login from an unrecognized device. They froze it as a precaution. I checked my recent activity. Someone had tried to transfer $3,000 out of my account. I froze. I keep that account locked down. 2-factor authentication. Long password. But there was one place I'd written that password down, just once. On a notepad I used to keep at my parents' house years ago, back when I still did laundry there and worked on their old computer. I'd forgotten all about it. But someone hadn't. I changed everything. Locked my accounts down. Called the fraud department. Thankfully, no money had actually been taken. But I couldn't prove who tried it. I had a hunch. Vanessa always had a talent for guessing my passwords, and she wasn't above borrowing money without asking. But I had no proof. Just suspicion. And fury. That was the last straw. I took the day off work and started gathering documents. Financial records, old text messages, every bank statement showing my temporary mortgage support, screenshots of messages, and even the co-signer agreement. I even pulled up social media posts, photos of the Paris trip with captions that made my blood boil. I wasn't sure yet what I was going to do with all of it, but I was done playing defense. I needed leverage. I needed control. A week later, I got a call from my old neighbor, Mrs. Langley. Sweet woman in her 70s who lived across the street from my parents. Jacob, she said, her voice low and hesitant. I'm so sorry to bother you, but I saw your sister outside your parents' house yesterday. She was moving a bunch of boxes into the garage. I think she's staying there now. What? Your mom said something about Vanessa and Alan having a bit of a rocky patch and needing space. I thought you should know. That night, I checked Vanessa's Instagram. It was private now. Strange. I checked Alan's. Still public. No posts since late May. Huh. The next morning, I drove by my parents' house. Vanessa's SUV was in the driveway. So was Alan's. And parked behind them, on the lawn like some kind of afterthought, was a U-Haul. I stared at it from down the street, engine idling, heart racing. She had moved in. She had moved her entire family into my parents' house. And now they were all living under one roof. The same roof I'd been helping keep over their heads while they lied to me, excluded me, and tried to siphon money from my account. Something snapped. This wasn't just favoritism anymore. This was war. And they had no idea what was coming next. I didn't know it was possible to feel so many things at once. Rage, betrayal, grief, exhaustion, all tangled into one tight knot in my chest. Watching that U-Haul in the driveway of the house I practically kept afloat for the past 2 years felt like standing outside my own funeral. Like they buried the version of me who kept giving, kept hoping, kept trying to earn love through loyalty. I sat in my car for a long time that afternoon, parked halfway down the block in the shade of an overgrown elm, watching shadows move behind the curtains of my parents' living room. I couldn't see faces, but I could imagine the laughter, the casual joy, the life going on without me. Replaced. Erased. That night, I didn't go home. I drove past my house and just kept going. I didn't even know where I was heading. I ended up on a back road near the lake, pulled over, and stared at the water until the stars came out. I don't know how long I was there. Maybe an hour, maybe more. But something inside me broke that night. Not the part of me that felt pain. That part was already bruised beyond recognition. What broke was the last thread of hope I'd been clinging to. The belief that maybe one day they'd see me, choose me, care. They weren't going to. And that's what finally set me free. The next few weeks were strange. I stopped checking their social media. I unfollowed Vanessa, muted my mom's account, blocked Alan. I turned my focus inward, not in some poetic way, but because I had nothing left to give anyone else. I went to work. I came home. I ate whatever was in the fridge. I let the house get messy. Stopped returning texts from old friends. I wasn't okay. And for the first time in my life, I didn't pretend to be. But the thing about rock bottom? There's nowhere left to fall. And once I hit it, I realized something quietly powerful. I was still standing. Still here. Still breathing. And I didn't owe anyone a damn thing. It started small. One Sunday morning, I got out of bed and cleaned the whole house. Not for anyone else, just for me. I opened the windows, played some old records, and mopped the kitchen floor until it shined. I found a box of old tools I'd forgotten about in the garage and fixed the loose cabinet that had been bugging me for months. Then I sat down and made a list, just a small one, of things I'd been putting off because I was too busy playing family firefighter. Renewing my passport, replacing the back porch light, getting a new mattress. Little things, maybe, but they felt like mine. At work, I started saying no to jobs I didn't want. I raised my rates. My business had always been steady, but I'd been undercharging for years out of guilt. Don't price yourself out of the market, my dad used to say. Funny how the only market I'd been underpricing for was my family. I revamped my website, streamlined my services, and for the first time ever, I hired help. A guy named Omar who reminded me of myself a few years back. Quiet, reliable, and underappreciated. I trained him personally and started giving him some of the smaller jobs. Not only did it ease my workload, but it gave me space to think, to build. And build I did. I started running again. Nothing dramatic. Just 3 miles in the morning, just enough to clear my head. I signed up for a half marathon in the fall, partly as a challenge, and partly because it gave me something to look forward to that no one could take away. I stopped eating junk. Started sleeping better. My skin cleared up. My phone rang less, and I liked it that way. Silence used to feel like loneliness. Now it felt like peace. One day in August, I got a call from a client I'd worked with the year before, a commercial property owner who needed full HVAC work done on a strip mall he was renovating. It was a massive job. Would have overwhelmed me a year ago. But now, I had help. Systems. Confidence. I submitted my bid without undercutting myself. He accepted it immediately. The contract was worth more than I made in the previous 2 years combined. I stared at the signed document, stunned. Not because I didn't believe I could handle it, but because for the first time in my life, I realized just how much I'd been holding back. Shrinking myself to fit a version of me my family found useful. That night, I celebrated. Not with a party. Not with anyone. I just cooked myself a steak, opened a bottle of decent wine, and sat on the porch watching the sun set behind the trees. It wasn't flashy, but it was mine. Around that same time, my phone started lighting up again. Not from friends or clients, but from my parents. At first, it was subtle. A text here, a missed call there. Then a voicemail from my mom. Hi, sweetheart. I know it's been a while, but I just wanted to hear your voice. Vanessa's been struggling, and we've all been so overwhelmed. Alan's been staying with a friend temporarily, and the kids are back in school. It's just been a lot. Anyway, we miss you. Call me. I didn't. The next week, another message. Jacob, your father's not doing well. His blood pressure's been up, and I think the stress is catching up to him. He won't say it, but I know he misses you. We all do. Can we talk? Still, I didn't answer. It wasn't about punishment anymore. It was about preservation. Every time I thought about stepping back into that dynamic, I felt the tightness in my chest return. The slow drain of energy. The quiet grief of being seen as less. I wasn't going back. But the final straw? It came 1 week later, when I got a letter in the mail. A legal envelope. Certified. I opened it cautiously, heart pounding. Inside was a typed letter from a lawyer, my parents' lawyer. It stated that my parents were formally requesting a conversation regarding the financial support they believed I had committed to providing during their refinancing period, citing an informal verbal agreement that I would ensure mortgage stability until such time as they could resume payments. It wasn't a lawsuit. Not yet. But it was a threat. They were testing me. I sat down in my kitchen, letter in hand, staring at the same counter where I used to drop off bags of groceries for them during COVID, where I used to make meals to bring over on weekends, where I once signed that stupid cosigner form, thinking I was helping. They were trying to manipulate me again. Legally this time. But what they didn't realize, what they'd never realized, was that I'd changed. I wasn't scared anymore. I wasn't that tired, overworked son begging for scraps of affection. I was a man who had clawed his way out of the hole they dug, one painful inch at a time. I was done being the safety net, done being the backup plan, done being the invisible backbone of a family that treated me like an afterthought. And for the first time ever, I was ready to fight back. Not with yelling, not with begging, but with the kind of revenge that didn't look like revenge at all. Strategic, calculated, legal. They wanted a conversation? They were going to get one. Just not the kind they expected. The legal letter sat on my kitchen table for 3 days. I didn't touch it, didn't move it, didn't even put anything near it. I'd eat my meals on the couch, do my invoices on the porch. The envelope sat there like a ghost, quiet but cold, a reminder of the final insult they thought I'd swallow. But I wasn't panicking. Not this time. Because this wasn't some knee-jerk guilt trip. This was tactical. They were poking the bear to see if he'd still roll over. They miscalculated. On the 4th morning, I picked up the envelope, slid it into a folder, and took a slow drive into town. Not to visit my parents. Not to have a conversation. I had a different destination in mind. One I'd been avoiding for too long. The office of my old friend, Erin. Erin and I went to high school together. Back then, she was the quiet one who always knew the answers, but never raised her hand. We lost touch after graduation, as people do, until I bumped into her at a gas station last year. She was wearing a blazer, sipping coffee, and talking to someone on speaker about real estate zoning regulations. Turned out she'd become an attorney. A good one, specializing in property law and civil disputes. At the time, I told her we should grab coffee. We never did. Now, I had a folder full of reasons. When I walked into her office that morning, she looked surprised but not unhappy to see me. "Jacob," she said, rising from behind a desk cluttered with sticky notes, case files, and a half-eaten muffin. "Wow, it's been forever." I smiled, more tired than anything. "Yeah, sorry it took me this long to come by. I have something I need your help with." We sat down, and I told her everything. From the mortgage co-signing to the automatic payments. The Paris trip. The cold exclusion. The sudden attempt to log into my savings. The legal letter. I didn't sugarcoat anything, but I also didn't get emotional. I was calm, focused, just laying the facts out like a blueprint. Erin listened without interrupting, only occasionally jotting down a note or tapping something into her laptop. When I finished, she let out a long breath. "Jacob, first of all, I'm sorry. That's a lot. And I don't mean just legally. I mean emotionally. You've been holding up an entire household that doesn't seem to hold you at all." I nodded, jaw tight. "Yeah, I'm done with that part. I want to make sure they can't come after me for a dime." She leaned forward. "Good news is, they don't have a case. Not even close. Unless you signed a written agreement stating you'd pay their mortgage indefinitely, they can't prove intent. Verbal agreements are shaky enough, and this one's got zero evidence backing it. They'll say I paid for almost 2 years. Which you did," she said. "But as a gift. As support. Not a contract. Especially if you stopped payments and gave notice." I pulled out a printed screenshot of the text I sent my mom. "That's the last mortgage payment I'm covering." She nodded. "Perfect. That's your off-ramp, time-stamped." I let out a small laugh. "So they tried to scare me with nothing." "Not nothing," she corrected. "They tried to scare you with the idea that you'd cave. That's how manipulation works. It's not about law. It's about control." I liked the way she said that. Clear. No nonsense. Like she saw right through them the same way I was starting to. "What do you want to do?" she asked. And that's when it hit me. I didn't just want to defend myself. I wanted to finally be done playing on their board. I wanted to flip the entire game. We started that day. Erin helped me draft a formal response to the lawyer who'd sent the letter, denying any legal obligation to continue mortgage payments and requesting a cease and desist on further harassment. It was worded professionally but firmly. No wiggle room. No emotion. Just facts. Then she asked the question I didn't expect. "Do you want to pursue damages?" I blinked. "What kind of damages?" "Well," she said, tilting her head, "you've provided over a year of financial support under false pretenses. If we can prove manipulation or coercion, or even just demonstrate that you were misled, we could argue for reimbursement." I sat back in my chair. The thought had never crossed my mind. Suing my own parents? My sister? But then I remembered the Instagram posts. The champagne. the hashtags, the caption. So grateful to my amazing parents for helping make this happen. They had money. They just didn't use it on me. And the worst part? They didn't even hide it. I don't want to sue them, I said slowly. But I do want them to feel it. I want them to understand that I'm not a resource. I'm not a doormat. I'm not invisible. Aaron grinned. Then let's make sure they don't forget it. From that point on, I started moving in silence. First, I pulled my credit report. I made sure there were no other surprise debts or co-signed accounts lingering in the shadows. I closed every shared financial connection, changed my banking info, and put alerts on all my cards. I opened a new savings account under a separate bank, one they'd never heard of. Then I started documenting everything: messages, voicemails, dates, amounts. I compiled a timeline. Aaron said it might not lead to a court case, but it gave us leverage. If they tried anything else, another letter, a public smear, even a social media pity post, we'd be ready. But I wasn't just planning for defense. I had something bigger in mind, something they never saw coming. It started with my parents' house. The same house I helped pay for. The same house where Vanessa and her family were now living rent-free, while my parents floated some narrative about Alan being in between jobs. Well, turns out, Alan wasn't just in between jobs. He was in trouble. Aaron's firm had access to public financial records. She dug a little deeper. Alan's name popped up in a list of small claims judgments, 3 in the last 5 years. Credit card defaults, 1 car repossession, a quiet lien placed on a condo he once tried to flip. His credit was garbage. No wonder they're staying with your folks, Aaron said, flipping through the paperwork. Alan's a financial sinkhole. I smirked. So they gambled their retirement on a guy who can't manage a checking account. Looks like it. That gave me an idea. I called a friend of mine, Dave, who works in real estate. I told him I was thinking of buying a property in my old neighborhood. Something small, low maintenance. Something near my parents' street, maybe. He chuckled. Nostalgic, huh? Let's call it that. Dave found me a listing 2 blocks over. A single-story fixer-upper with good bones and a desperate seller. I bought it in cash. No mortgage. No paper trail they'd catch wind of. And then I started fixing it up, not for profit. For strategy. I hired a local crew, painted the outside, landscaped the front, gutted the kitchen, turned it into something beautiful, all in silence. Meanwhile, I kept my distance. No texts, no calls, but I knew they were watching. Mrs. Langley, ever the neighborhood informant, kept me in the loop. I saw your mother walking past the new house today, she told me one morning. She looked curious. Let her wonder, I said. And then, 1 week later, I got the voicemail that changed everything. It was my sister. Jacob, Vanessa said, her voice unusually soft. Hey, look, I know things have been weird. I heard you bought a house near here. Mom mentioned something. I was thinking maybe we could get coffee. Just the 2 of us. Clear the air. Clear the air. I could practically hear the strings tightening behind her words. She wasn't sorry. She was circling. And I was done playing defense. It was time to set the trap. I didn't respond to Vanessa's voicemail right away. I listened to it once, twice, 3 times. Not because I was unsure, but because I wanted to dissect every word. The tone, the phrasing, the calculated softness. She wasn't reaching out to apologize. She was fishing for information. She'd heard I bought a house near the neighborhood and wanted to know why. Maybe she thought I'd flipped it. Maybe she assumed I'd come crawling back to throw them another bone now that my business was booming. What she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the house was part of the plan. The house was bait. I called her back 2 days later. Let it ring just long enough for her to think I wouldn't. When she picked up, she launched into small talk, fake laughter, and little sighs about how tough things have been lately. She never said sorry. Never mentioned the Paris trip. Not even a throwaway line about the mortgage letter. It was like none of it had happened. I'd love to see the place, she said after a few minutes. Maybe bring the kids by? They miss you, you know. Of course, I said, playing along. I'm still settling in, but I could give you a quick tour. Just you and me, though. Oh, okay. Why not the kids? Don't want them getting hurt. Still some construction going on. She hesitated. Right. Makes sense. We set a date. Thursday morning. I made sure it was a day Alan would be at work, if he still had a job. I also made sure the crew I hired to finish the fence knew to start later that day, so we could talk in private. Thursday came fast. I cleaned the place up, no need for deception, I was proud of it, and waited by the kitchen island with a pot of coffee and 2 mismatched mugs. Vanessa showed up 10 minutes late, dressed like she was going to brunch with a politician. Oversized sunglasses, flowy blouse, dramatic earrings. Wow, she said, stepping inside. This is really nice. Thanks, I said. It's getting there. She walked the space slowly, touching countertops, peering through windows. I could feel the gears turning in her head. So, she said after her little tour, this a rental property, or? Nope, I said. Personal project. Planning to move in. Not exactly. Her eyes flicked up. Then what? I poured her some coffee, sat down, and let a silence stretch just long enough to make her squirm. Then I said it. I bought this place because it's 2 blocks from Mom and Dad's, and I want to keep an eye on my investment. She blinked. What investment? I reached into a folder on the counter and slid a stack of papers toward her. This, I said. My formal request for the repayment of $22,400 in mortgage contributions made over the course of 16 months. Each payment documented. Each withdrawal tied to your parents' account. Vanessa didn't touch the folder. Her smile was gone. What is this? It's a letter of intent. If they, or you, try to come after me again with baseless legal threats, I will pursue recovery of those funds in small claims court. And I'll have a lawyer this time. A good one. You're going to sue your own family? She asked, voice rising. No, I said. I'm going to protect myself from them. There's a difference. She scoffed. This is ridiculous. I leaned forward. What's ridiculous is living in a house someone else paid for while pretending you're the victim. Her eyes narrowed. We never asked you to pay anything. You're right. You never asked. You just assumed. Again and again. Until I became part of the foundation under your feet. She stood up. So what? You brought me here to threaten me. I shook my head slowly. No. I brought you here to explain what's going to happen next. I pulled out another document. This one was thinner. Just a single page. This is a letter I've drafted. It's addressed to Mom and Dad. It outlines the conditions of my disengagement from the family. I won't be attending holidays. I won't be visiting the house. I won't be involved in medical emergencies, school fundraisers, or helping out with bills. Effective immediately. Vanessa's jaw tightened. You think you're punishing them, but all you're doing is making yourself look bitter. Maybe, I said, but I'd rather be bitter than broken. She stared at me, unreadable for a moment, then turned to leave. At the door, she stopped. You know they always loved you, right? She said quietly. I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. No, they loved what I did for them. That's not the same. She left without another word. I mailed the letter to my parents the same day. Certified. Tracked. Signed receipt. No excuses. 2 days later, I got a response, not from them, but from Alan. A nasty little email that read more like a tantrum than a statement. He accused me of trying to destroy the family, claimed I'd turned a rough patch into a personal vendetta, and even tried to bait me by saying, we always knew you felt second best. Maybe now we know why. I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded it to Erin. She replied within 10 minutes. Exactly the kind of message that makes them look unstable, not you. Keep it. A week passed. Then 2. I heard nothing from my parents. No calls. No letters. Just silence. And then, the fallout began. Mrs. Langley, God bless her, called me one morning with an update. Apparently, Vanessa and Alan were moving out. Or trying to. There had been shouting in the driveway. My mom crying. My dad sitting on the porch, looking like a statue. The SUV was packed. But Vanessa kept going back into the house, slamming doors. A few days later, I drove by just once. The SUV was gone. So was Alan's car. The lawn looked overgrown. The windows were dark. For the first time in years, the house looked tired. Hollow. I didn't stop. I had no reason to anymore. Months passed. Fall came. I finished the house renovations and sold the place at a profit. Enough to cover every dollar I gave them, and then some. I put the extra into my business. Expanded. Omar now runs his own team under my brand. We service 3 counties. My name is on the trucks. The logo on the uniforms. I bought myself a new truck. Nothing flashy. Just clean. Paid in full. And on Christmas Day, while my old family probably gathered around the same table pretending everything was fine, I sat by a fireplace at a cabin I rented up north. Alone. Peaceful. Not lonely. The snow fell silently outside the window. I sipped my coffee, wrapped in a warm flannel, a book in my lap, and no one asking me for anything. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the fallback. I wasn't the wallet. I wasn't the extra. I was free. And all it cost me was a family that never really saw me anyway. Let them wonder what happened to the good son. I buried him the day I saw those Paris photos. And the man who replaced him? He doesn't look back.